about an enterprise that was founded with humble beginnings and grew into an institution. Sloan Paper Company was established by Solomon LeProd Sloan, receiving its charter on June the 25th, 1918, during World War I. It was located in one unit of a joint warehouse building at 18 Central Avenue, Atlanta, Georgia. The building was 5 stories high, plus a basement, and was partitioned into units approximately 20 feet wide and 100 feet deep. This building was between Wall and Alabama Streets and in the area where Underground Atlanta is now. There was a freight elevator with a lift capacity of 700 pounds and could accommodate 1 case of paper at the time. In those days, all grades of paper were packed in wooden cases, the weight of which were approximately 600 pounds. There was no railroad siding, and all paper had to be unloaded from boxcars at a public team track and hauled by a dray to the warehouse. Consequently, commerce moved at a snail's pace compared to today's standards. Third, the company began operation with franchise distributorships from Champion Paper Company, Strathmore Paper Company, Miller's Falls Paper Company, Eastern Corporation, U.S. Envelope Company, International Paper Company. Business was good due to wartime shortages, and this condition continued through 1919. The year 1919 witnessed the enactment of the 18th Amendment, that is, Prohibition, and the country remained legally dry until repeal in 1933. Sloan had sales for the first business year, ending June 30, 1919, of $178,049, and net profit after taxes of $15,765. By the way, the Dow Jones average at the end of 1919 was 107.23. On September 30, 1919, L.A. Menzel, who would be 97 years young on August 1, 1987, joined the still youthful company. Lou Menzel, for over 40 years, was responsible for our out-of-town sales, and he made a significant contribution to the success of the organization. His territory consisted of Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, Mississippi, Florida, South Carolina, North Carolina. By the beginning of 1920, a recession set in and grew progressively worse. It ended by the middle of 1921. But, unfortunately, during this period, prices dropped 40%, resulting in a devastation of inventory values. Sales for the year for Sloan, ending June 30, 1920, amounted to $354,895, with a net profit of $17,533. During 1920, we were granted the S.D. Warren franchise. And by the way, the population of Metro Atlanta in 1920 was 367,174. By the end of March 1922, Sloan was in serious financial condition. The mills we represented did not want Sloan to fail, if at all possible, so they appointed a creditors committee consisting of, among others, Mr. Horace Moses, president of Strathmore Paper Company, and Mr. Eddie Gray of the S.D. Warren Company, to attempt to work out a plan and program for paying off the indebtedness. Mr. Gray had met Mr. James L. Wells, at that time manager of Whitaker Paper Company, and recommended him to the creditors as a man who he thought could work out Sloan's financial problems. Mr. Wells accepted their offer, and on January 1st, 1923, he came to Sloan as vice president, bringing with him Louis L. Ferry. In 1922, Sloan was awarded the Beckett franchise, and Mr. S.M. Wood joined the company in Birmingham, Alabama. By the way, on March the 15th, 1922, WSB began broadcasting in Atlanta and was the first broadcasting station in the South. Mr. Earl Wheatley, sales manager for the company, among his other responsibilities, wrote several articles about paper for the monthly Chamber of Commerce publication, The City Builder. In 1922, when Mr. Wells came to Sloan in 1923, he started building an organization with an esprit de corps that in time would prove to be second to none. He selected well-qualified people for every position, assigned them multi-responsibilities, and promoted them as they performed. In May 1923, the country experienced another recession, which lasted until July 1924. After 2 years of net losses, the year ended June 30th, 1923, we had sales of $519,756 with a net profit of $13,741.11. In 1924, Mr. Wells became president and Mr. S.L. Sloan resigned. Also during this year, R.E. Carter joined the firm December the 15th, and Calvin Coolidge was elected president. When Mr. Wells came to Sloan Paper Company, he purchased 50% of the stock in the company. And at the time of Mr. Sloan's resignation, Mr. Wells purchased sufficient additional stock so that he, at that time, owned a controlling interest in the company. In 1923, Mr. T.L. Heineman Sr. was employed in the accounting department, and after Mr. F.L. Sloan resigned, Mr. L.L. Ferry was elected a director of the company. At that time, the officers of the company were Mr. James L. Wells, President, Mr. William C. Russell, Vice President, Mr. J.A. Krause, Secretary Treasurer. The young company continued to grow, and for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 1925, our sales were $548,224 with a net profit of $11,359. By 1926, we had grown sufficiently to where we could not continue to operate in the limited space that we occupied at 18 Central Avenue, and the company moved to 543 Whitehall Street to a two-story building consisting of 27,000 square feet on a railroad siding with an alley alongside. Throughout the 20s and before Mr. Wells came to Sloan Paper Company, he had participated in many civic affairs. He was a member of the City Council of the City of Atlanta and remained in that capacity until he ran for mayor of Atlanta in 1936. 1926, at the annual stockholders meeting, Mr. John L. Sloan, a brother of S.L. Sloan, as well as Mr. L.A. Menzel, were elected to the board of directors. 1927 was an exciting year, not only for Sloan, but also for the city of Atlanta and the entire country. Charles A. Lindbergh made his famous solo flight on May the 20th across the Atlantic Ocean. The first talking picture in Atlanta was at the Metropolitan Theater, where the Eastern Airlines ticket office is now at the corner of Lucky and Broad Street. The movie was The Jazz Singer with Al Jolson. Another most important event occurred in 1927, and that was the invention of the Xerox process and patent by Chester Carlson. It was some 20 years later before the Xerox actually began to influence business in this country. And as you probably know, every day about 1 billion copies are made using the xerographic process, which was invented by Chester Carlson. And this business continues to grow every year. Our sales for the year ending June 30th, 1927 was $645,945 with a net profit of $17,823. 1928 business continued to be good. We qualified to do business in Birmingham on March the 15th. Herbert Hoover was elected president. Georgia Tech was undefeated in football, was invited to the Rose Bowl to play against the University of California on January 1st, 1929, and naturally defeated California. As stated, we began the year 1929 full of enthusiasm. Business was still good. Tech had won the Rose Bowl game. As of the end of the year, June 30th, our sales were $655,688 with a net profit of $21,594 before taxes. The prosperous and roaring 20s were beginning to come to an end with the beginning of this, with the stock market crash on October the 29th. The beginning of the year 1930 ushered in the era of the Great Depression, which lasted theoretically until Roosevelt was inaugurated in March of 1933. However, we really had a continued recession throughout the entire decade of the 30s. During 1930, the population of Metro Atlanta was 479,000. Sloan's sales ending June the 30th was $637,411, and our profit before taxes were $20,598. In 1930, Eastern Airlines and Delta Airlines began regular scheduled passenger service in and out of Atlanta. And our own Bobby Jones scored a grand slam in golf, winning the U.S. Amateur, the U.S. Open, the British Amateur, and the British Open tournaments. In December of 1930, Judy Hargraves joined the company, representing us in Chattanooga and surrounding cities in Tennessee and in North Georgia. In 1931, business conditions nationally and therefore almost naturally in the South deteriorated rapidly. And on June 30th, 1931, Sloan sales were $503,441, but there were considerable losses due to businesses going into bankruptcy, and our net profit ended up $1,651. 1932 started out rather rough for the company, in as much as early in January, the treasurer of the company advised he was short some $20,000. The company had not paid off the indebtedness which we were attempting to wipe out, and this was quite a blow. However, Mr. Wells, together with the help of all of his loyal employees, was determined that we would overcome the difficulties. On January the 18th, 1932, Mr. T.L. Hyman Sr. was elected treasurer, and Mr. L.L. Ferry was elected secretary. Business, of course, continued to deteriorate, and our sales as of June 30th were $391,853, but we ended up with a net loss of $35,110. In 1932, the month of November, Franklin D. Roosevelt was elected President of the United States for the first time, and James R. Spinks became associated with the company. After Roosevelt was elected in November, the Dow Jones average began to climb from its low point during the year of 40. As the year 1933 began, the morale of the American people were at its lowest point. Unemployment was rampant. Banks were failing by the hundreds throughout the country, as well as businesses. Bread lines were in every city, and it was obvious when Roosevelt was inaugurated on March the 4th that it was going to be necessary that he take immediate action to restore the confidence of the American people. On March the 6th, all of the United States banks were ordered closed by the President. On March the 9th, Congress had been called into special session, and during the 100 days of special session, it passed the New Deal legislation, which Roosevelt called amended, be passed. In the ensuing days, confidence began to return to the American people. However, business was a long ways from returning to what it had been during the roaring 20s. Sloan sales ending June 30th, 1933 were $309,909 with a net loss of $5,037. Roosevelt's legislation, which was known as the New Deal, began to provide jobs for a lot of people and helped to restore the overall confidence and faith in themselves and the government. Business was slowly improving, and by June the 30th, 1934, Sloan sales were $391,346 with a net profit before taxes of $22,197. On June the 10th, 1934, Robert Chambers became associated with the company as office boy. In 1935, business remained about the same. It was a little harder to make profit. Our sales ended June 30th, 1935 were $414,384 with a net profit before taxes of $16,087. During this year, Margaret Mitchell published a novel, Gone with the Wind. And on August 14, 1935, the Social Security Act was passed by Congress. 1936, business conditions improved slightly. Mr. Wells, who had been a very civic-minded person, had served in city council for many years, ran for mayor of Atlanta, and was defeated by William B. Hartsfield, who served the city of Atlanta well for 25 years. During this year, the Spanish Civil War began. Sloan paid off its indebtedness, which had been approximately $200,000. It paid its first dividend on its common stock and initiated a bonus plan. In November, Franklin Roosevelt was elected to a second term, taking every state in the Union except Maine and Vermont. His opponent was Alf Landon from the state of Kansas. The year 1937 was quite important for Sloan Paper Company and the paper industry in general. Sloan Paper Company, at the beginning of the year, had salesman Mr. L.A. Munford traveling the territory in Georgia, Mr. S.M. Wood in Birmingham and parts of Alabama, Joe Mills, whom we had employed, represented us in Montgomery. Judy Hargraves represented the company in Chattanooga and North Georgia. Our city salesmen were Al Ferry, John L. Sloan, who was a brother of the founder of the company, but who owned only a small interest, John Clayton, and Mr. Wells had 3 accounts that he called on. Also traveled Georgia territory. Warehouse in Atlanta was operated and managed by James R. Spinks. The oil department was headed by R.E. Carter and assisted by R.M. Chambers. Red Carter ordered all the paper, answered all telephone calls except those which were handled by his assistant. He deducted all of the sales charges. He carried on all the dictation with the paper mills. He priced all the charges, and the billing was done by our one female employee who, in addition to the billing, took the dictation from all salesmen, as well as Mr. Wells, and the credit department, headed up by the treasurer, Mr. Heinlein, who was assisted by the bookkeeper, Nick Scott. In August Mr. John Sloan died suddenly, and his accounts were assigned to Red Carter. His job in the audit department was then assigned to his assistant, Bob Chambers. During this year, we purchased property up there in Castleberry Street, which had on it a warehouse building with leak, and we stored the warehouse newsprint, but we had to shuffle it from one place to another to keep it from getting wet. During this year, an invention took place by Chester Carson, who was the developer of zero graphic paper. It took 21 years of tedious work and effort before a truly usable zero graphic copier was produced. But today, 50 years after his invention, the use of copies coming from the zero graphic process amounts to about 1 billion copies a day. And if all that paper were a continuous roll, it would stretch 157,828 miles, enough to wrap around the earth 6 times. Think what that process has done for the paper business. Copiers have spawned whole new industries. And one good example is the quick print job. The use of copiers keeps growing, and according to the Xerox Corporation, about 60% to 70% of all copies are copies of copies. This process has surely contributed clearly to an increase in our business. In 1938, in Europe, war clouds were spreading fast and speedy. On March 12th, Hitler marched into Austria and occupied the nation within 3 days without firing a shot. In September, a pact was signed at Munich between Germany, Great Britain, France, and Italy that was supposed to be peace in our time. Of course, it allowed a substantial slice of Czechoslovakia to be taken over by Germany. On June the 28th, a national minimum wage law was enacted by Congress, mandating a minimum hourly wage of 30 cents with 1 1/2 times for any work over 40 hours. On March the 19th, Wyndham Mission was employed, and on October the 22nd, Raymond Pilot joined the company. In 1939, development continued to take place that indicated war in Europe was likely. On August the 20th, the announcement came that the Soviet Union and Germany had concluded a non-aggression pact. On September 1st, Hitler invaded Poland and World War II was begun. Great Britain and France, adhering to their treaty with Poland, declared war on Germany. President Mitchell's book Gone with the Wind was made into a movie and it premiered in Atlanta at the Sloan Theater. Including Clark Gable as Rhett Butler and Vivian Lee as Scarlett O'Hara. Here was held in Atlanta in December of 1939. This proved to be a successful social event of momentous attempt. As the year ended, business, of course, had picked up due to the war in Europe. Unemployment had dropped tremendously. In 1940, March the 1st, Thomas J. Johnson Jr. became associated with the company. And on March the 4th, 1940, Richard H. Johnson was employed. During this year, the population of Metro Atlanta was 558,842. Our sales were $508,111, and our profit before taxes were $19,366. For the year ending June 30th. In January, Diane Sanders was elected a member of the board of directors. Roosevelt was elected to an unprecedented third term after France had surrendered to Germany in June. The war situation was getting worse. He was affecting potentially the interests of the United States. In the election for mayor this year, Hartsfield was defeated by Roy LaCroix, who chaired only a few months because when the United States became involved in the war, he resigned and entered the armed services. Hartsfield was then re-elected and continued to serve for many years. That's our treasure. That's it. In Great Britain, and things were at a very low ebb for that country, and he offered the British people, quote, blood, toil, tears, and sweat. On June 22nd, 1941, Hitler proved to the rest of the world how much he could be trusted with any kind of treaty with another country. On that morning, the German forces attacked the Soviet Union with planes and troops. This move on the part of Hitler was to prove subsequently to be one of his many serious mistakes. On December 7th, Sloan bombed Pearl Harbor in a surprise attack and inflicted devastating damages to our naval forces and air force at that base. The United States was now in World War II. On March 1st, 1943, C.J. Donaldson Jr. was elected the director and assistant treasurer of the company. All prices, profits, wages were frozen. Gasoline, sugar, fuel, ties were rationed, and a wartime economy is now in place. This would be the situation for the duration. And in 1942, Thomas J. Donaldson Jr., James R. Spence, Raymond M. Pollock, Richard H. Johnson, Russell Wilson, and Barry Loomis all entered the armed services for the duration. WACS WAC became the first U.S. women soldiers and American troops land in North Africa during 1942. At the end of the football season, the University of Georgia had won the Southeastern Conference championship and was invited to play in the Rose Bowl on January 2nd, 1943, playing University of California, Los Angeles. And needless to say, the boys from Athens were victorious. On January 23rd, 1943, Mr. James L. Wells was elected chairman of the board. L.L. Fair was elected president. L.A. Munzer vice president. R.E. Carter vice president. T.L. Hyman treasurer. And R.M. Chambers secretary. On July 1st, 1943, Guy Hicks was employed as a city servant. Stalin, Roosevelt, and Churchill conferred Sloan, and Oklahoma was Broadway's big hit. 1944, Dwight D. Eisenhower was named Allied Supreme Commander, and in June, the Allies invaded Normandy and D-Day. And in November, Roosevelt was elected to an unprecedented fourth term. On April 12, 1945, President Roosevelt died at Warm Springs, Georgia, of cerebral hemorrhage, just 24 days before Germany surrendered unconditionally to the Allies and Russia. Paul Sherman was immediately sworn in to succeed Roosevelt as president. On May 6th, Germany surrenders unconditionally to the Allies and Russia. In August, the United States drops atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Japan, and World War II comes to an end with a surrender unconditionally by Japan. The United Nations is founded, and all of those men in the armed forces and Sloan Paper Company returned home safe. Shortly after his return home from the war, Raymond Pollock is transferred to our Birmingham division. 1946. Business is very good due to pent-up demand and wartime charges, and the name's good for the next several years. Our sales as of June 30th were $1,046,224, and of course was the first time that the company had ever had sales of as much as $1 million in 1 year. Our net profit at that point was $55,143 before taxes. On March the 25th, Clarence Smith was employed, and on July the 22nd, Russell Williamson was anointed a permanent employee. On December the 7th, a very tragic event occurred in the city of Atlanta, in which the One Park Hotel located at Ellis and Peachtree Street experienced a severe fire, and 119 people lost their lives. As a result of this tragedy, state legislation greatly expanded and strengthened the state fire code and has inspired stricter codes throughout other cities in the nation. In 1947, business remains very good due to still unfilled needs and choices. We were on allotment with all mills, which